Where you will be in 20 years is decided not by what you do after 40. It's decided by what you didn't do before 30. In this video, we'll break down a mechanism stronger than any motivation, any discipline, and any talent. Compound interest. Just not in money, in skills. And we'll look at why specifically the years between 20 and 35 decide who you become by 50. First, the math. There's no skipping it. Imagine two people. Both want to get strong in some field. One started at 25 and put in 1 hour a day. The other decided to wait and started at 35. Same 1 hour a day. Both reached 45. 1 hour a day, that's 365 hours a year. The first person, by 45, accumulated 7,300 hours. That's almost the famous number everyone has heard, about 10,000 hours of mastery. We'll come back to it. The second person, by 45, accumulated 3,650 hours. Half as much. That's it. Just because they waited 10 years. But the interesting part comes next. In skills, unlike in money, there's another effect. Each new hour builds on all the previous ones. When you learn at hour 1,000, you already see what you couldn't see at hour 100. An hour at the 5,000th gives you 10 times more than an hour at the 20th. It's like compound interest in a bank account. Only the interest rate is higher. Much higher. If you put $10,000 in a bank at 7% annual at age 25, by 65 you'd have around 150,000. The same 10,000 placed at 45, only 38,000. In skills, the gap is even bigger. Because skill grows not linearly, but exponentially. The more you know, the faster you absorb new things. This is the main paradox. It feels like at 25 you still have an ocean of time. In reality, the most valuable time is leaving right now. Think about how retirement savings work. If you set aside $100 a month from age 25 at a moderate interest rate, by 65 you'll have around $250,000. The same $100 a month, started at 45, only about 50,000. The difference is fivefold. And that difference isn't because you invested more. You invested almost the same. The difference comes from the number of years the money worked for itself. With skills, it's the same. A skill works for itself through application. Every time you apply something you learned a year ago, you don't just repeat, you add a new layer. Over 10 years, that's 10,000 layers of experience. Over 5,000. You can't catch up by speeding up. You can't buy it with money. You can't get it through a course. Only through time plus action. Now let's figure out why this effect is especially strong between 20 and 35. Biology kicks in. In our brain, there are two types of tissue. Gray matter, these are the neurons themselves. White matter, these are the wires between them, covered in special insulation. That insulation is called myelin. Myelin speeds up the signal in neurons 100 times. When you train any skill, play guitar, solve problems, hold a complex conversation, the brain coats with myelin those very neurons you're using. More repetitions, thicker insulation, faster execution next time. It was long thought myelination ends in adolescence. In 2011, scientists from a Canadian university published in a neuroscience journal the results of a long-term observation. 103 people from 5 to 32 years old, 221 brain scans. The result was shocking. White matter in the prefrontal cortex continues to develop at least until 30 years. For some people, until 35 and beyond. Moreover, there's a method of dating by radioactive carbon. It allowed counting how often new cells that make this insulation appear in the brain. Oligodendrocytes. Well, in the prefrontal cortex, 2.5 to 3% of new such cells are added every year. And they're added not evenly, but in response to learning. What this means in practice. The brain of a 25-year-old is physically hungry for new skills. Each repetition gives a bigger effect than the same repetition at 50. Not twice, not 3 times, but many times more. In 2015, in the journal Psychological Science, a massive study was published. A team from Harvard and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology gathered data on 48,000 people of different ages. They tested dozens of cognitive abilities and looked at the age each one peaks. The results destroyed the general idea that after 20, you slowly degrade. It's all much more complicated. Speed of information processing, how fast your brain catches new things, peaks at 18 to 20. After that, a slow decline. Working memory, how many thoughts you hold at once, peaks around 30. Abstract thinking, the ability to see patterns, peaks around 30 to 35. Social cognition, reading people, peaks at 40 to 50. Vocabulary and general knowledge, grows until 65 to 70. So it's not that after 20 you only lose. You switch. But there's a window when it's physically easier for you to absorb a base craft skill. That window is 20 to 35. After 40, it's not harder to learn at all, but harder to learn from scratch. If you already have a base, you'll keep adding to it until retirement. If not, you'll have to push past resistance from the brain that didn't exist at 25. Now, about the most famous myth on this topic. In 2008, a book came out that became a bestseller worldwide. Malcolm Gladwell, a journalist, wrote a book about what separates outstanding people from ordinary ones. There appeared the famous 10,000 hours rule. Want to become a master? Spend 10,000 hours. And that's it. This number is quoted everywhere. In lectures, in podcasts, in your feed. 10,000 hours, and you're a genius. The problem is one thing. It's not true. Gladwell took the number from research by the Swedish scientist Anders Ericsson. Ericsson studied violinists at the Berlin Conservatory. He compared 3 groups: future stars, good performers, and merely good. By 20 years old, the best violinists had on average accumulated about 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. Gladwell took this average number and turned it into a rule. But on average means half accumulated less, half more. Also, 20-year-old violinists weren't masters. They were only starting the path. Ericsson, until his death in 2020, publicly complained that his research was distorted. He asked people to stop calling it a rule. The main thing in his work was not the number of hours. It was how exactly those hours are spent. He called it deliberate practice, not repeating what you already do well, but pulling yourself out of the comfort zone on purpose, searching for your weaknesses, working specifically on what doesn't work. With feedback, most people confuse repetition with practice. 10,000 hours of driving don't make you a good driver. After the first 100 hours you hit a plateau, and then just turn the wheel. 10,000 hours on YouTube about some topic don't make you an expert. 10,000 hours at a job you don't love don't turn you into a master. In 2011, scientists from a California university ran an experiment. They gave students formulas for volumes of different geometric shapes to learn. One group studied the old way, each shape separately, in blocks, hour after hour. The other group studied differently, all shapes mixed. A little cube today, a little pyramid, a little sphere. Next day, all together again. A week later, both groups took a test. The first group, the one that studied in blocks, solved 20% of the problems. They felt they knew. In class it all worked. The second group, the one that studied mixed and constantly struggled, solved 63%. 3 times more. This was called desirable difficulties. If learning is easy, you're not actually learning. You learn only when it's hard, when you forget and remember, when it feels bad. So 10,000 hours on autopilot don't count. But 2,000 hours of deliberate work on weaknesses transform a person. Now the most important mechanism for those already over 25. Those who think they missed the window. They didn't. There's one path that works faster than becoming the best at one thing. Scott Adams, creator of the comic Dilbert, the most popular comic about offices and corporations in history. Hundreds of millions of copies. Magazines, books, merchandise. Adams talks about himself honestly. I'm not the best at drawing. Hundreds of thousands of artists are better. I'm not the best writer. Tens of thousands write funnier than me. I'm not the best at business. Millions understand corporations more deeply. But I'm in the top 25% in each of these 3. And the combination, that's already rare. The combination makes me unique. Adams called this a talent stack. In plain words, stacking skills. The math here is simple. Becoming the best at one thing means landing in 1% of 100. That's 15 to 20 years of life. That's Tiger Woods in golf. Or an Olympic athlete. Getting into the top 25% in one skill. Realistic in 2 to 3 years of deliberate practice. Now multiply. 25% times 25% is 6%. The combination of 2 skills puts you in the top 6%. Already above most specialists. Add a third skill. 6% times 25 is 1.5%. The combination of 3 skills makes you rare. Rarer than 1 in 100. And this doesn't take 20 years. This takes 5 to 7. In 2019, a book by David Epstein came out, Range. Epstein is a journalist who studies sports and science. The book got a huge response because it destroyed the myth of early specialization. Epstein compared 2 champions, Tiger Woods and Roger Federer. Woods started playing golf at 2. His father turned him into athlete number 1. Narrow specialization from infancy. Federer tried everything. Basketball, handball, tennis, swimming, skiing, badminton. Until age 13, he didn't even choose a main sport, and only then focused on tennis. Epstein combed through a huge database of athletic biographies. It turned out that world-class champions in most sports are former multi-sport athletes. They tried different things, and that's why in their chosen sport they had connections that narrow specialists don't. Epstein went further. He divided all areas of life into two types. Kind environments. These are where rules are constant, feedback is fast, chess and classical music. Here narrow specialists win. Wicked environments. That's everything else. Business, creative work, medicine, politics, relationships. Rules change, feedback is distorted, there's no one right answer. Here people with breadth win. Those who know how to carry ideas from one area to another. The investor Naval Ravikant put it even shorter. Find your specific knowledge. It's knowledge that can't be taught in school. If it can be taught, they'll find someone else and replace you. Specific knowledge feels like play to you. To others, like work. And this specific knowledge most often lies at the intersection of several of your skills and one of your interests. No one else stood at exactly this crossroads. That's why you're rare here. So skill stacking doesn't seem like a recent invention. Look at history. Leonardo da Vinci. Painter. Engineer. Anatomist. Inventor. Musician. Architect. By 30, he was just a good painter at a master's workshop in Florence. And then one thing layered on another. And 15 years later, you got a person with no equivalent to this day. His greatness isn't in one talent. It's in the combination. Benjamin Franklin. Printer. Inventor of the lightning rod. Diplomat. Author. Scientist. One of the founding fathers of America. Franklin didn't go to university. He dropped out of school at 10. Everything after that, self-education. He systematically built up skills one by one. First writing, then printing, then science, then politics, then diplomacy. Each next skill leaned on the previous ones. By 50, he was the most useful person in North America. You can see the pattern. None of the greats in history were narrow specialists. All of them were stacks, and most of them started the stack precisely in their 20s or 30s. Now, a view from the other side of the planet. In Japan, there's a concept that doesn't translate in one word. Shokunin. Literally, craftsman. In spirit, much deeper. Shokunin is a person who devotes their whole life to one craft. Not for fame, not for money, but to make their work a little better today than yesterday. The most famous shokunin of our time is Jiro Ono. He's 99 now. He runs a restaurant in Tokyo. 10 seats. Sushi only. 3 Michelin stars. To get in, you have to book a table a month ahead. Jiro has been making sushi for 75 years. Every day, and in one interview he said, "After 70 years in the profession, I am still not perfect. Every day I think, how to make the rice a little better today than yesterday." This is a different strategy. The exact opposite of stacking skills. One skill, the whole life, into infinity. And you know what? Both paths work. Shokunin is for those who found their thing at 20. For rare people who have a calling from childhood. Stacking skills is for everyone else. For the majority. For those who at 25 still don't understand who they are. That's you and me. The difference isn't which is better. The difference is what fits you personally. But both require the same thing. To start as early as possible. Now, the practice. What exactly to do? Without general words. First, pick 3 skills. Not 1. Not 10. The first, your base craft. What you earn from or plan to earn from. Programming, design, medicine, law, teaching, sales. The second, communication. Any. Writing, public speaking, negotiation, presentations, video. This skill multiplies the first by 10. The strongest specialist who can explain is weaker than a mediocre specialist who can. The third, something strange that's personally yours. What you like without explanation. Photography, languages, music, psychology, cooking, sports, history. This skill at first feels useless. But it's exactly the one that later glues the first 2 into a unique combination no one around has. Second, 1 hour a day. Minimum. Not when there's time. There will never be time. An hour before work or an hour after. No phone, no distractions, no music. 7 hours a week. 360 hours a year. In 3 years, over 1,000 hours in the skill. Enough to enter the top 25%. Third, deliberate practice, not repetition. At the end of each week, ask yourself, what am I doing badly? Where am I stuck? Work on that, not on what you already know. This is the most annoying rule because the brain resists. But it's exactly from weaknesses that level grows. Fourth, alternate. Don't block one skill for 3 months, then another. Alternate within the week. One day, skill 1. Next, 2. 2 days later, 3. Then back to 1. It feels slower, but it sticks 3 times better. Remember the experiment with the shapes, 20% versus 63. Fifth, keep a journal. Write down once a week what I learned, what didn't work, what I'll try next. Once a month, reread the notes. Once a year, compare your current self to who you were a year ago. Without notes, it feels like you're standing still. With notes, you see, no, you're moving. Sixth, learn by teaching. The fastest way to lock in a skill is to explain it to another person. Write short posts, make videos, tell friends. When you're forced to put it in words, the brain builds the connections that weren't there from passive consumption. This works at any level. A beginner explaining to another beginner, and both grow faster than alone. Seventh, find people who are 5 to 10 years ahead of you in this skill, not 20. 5. Their mistakes are still fresh. They remember how to walk through your current stage. Learning from a living legend is less efficient than learning from someone who was just recently where you are now. And one bonus, don't try to figure out in advance how your 3 skills will combine into your unique mix. Adams didn't plan to become the creator of the most popular Office comic. He drew as a child. He wrote humor. He worked at a bank. For 20 years, none of it combined. And then it did. By itself. Your job is to stack skills. Life will find how to combine them. There's a Chinese proverb people love to repeat. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. This is also about skills. If you're 22, you're right in the window. Use it. These are the most valuable years of your life. Not because you're young and beautiful, but because the brain still works like a sponge. If you're 35, the window narrows but hasn't closed. Social cognition and vocabulary will keep growing for another 25 years. You have an advantage over a 25-year-old. You already know what interests you. Don't lose time. If you're 45 or more, you won't catch a young person in processing speed, but you'll beat them in synthesis. That's a different compound. Experience assembles into unexpected combinations a young person physically doesn't have. It's not about age. It's about starting. Today, not on Monday, not on New Year's, not when life settles. One skill, an hour today. Second, an hour tomorrow. Third, an hour the day after. In a year, people won't recognize you. In 5, you'll be a rare specialist. In 20, you'll have a life impossible by any other path. Compound interest works slowly at first and explodes at the end. All research confirms it, and thousands of biographies too. This is one of those rare cases where science, math, and 1,000-year traditions say the same thing. Invest in skills now. Tom will handle the rest. On this channel, methods for boosting effectiveness based on research. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns of what actually works in the long run. This isn't about quick life hacks. This is about what changes life over a year, 5 years, 20 years.